Okay. Okay, well, good afternoon. Je tiens d'abord à reconnaître que nous sommes réunis sur le territoire traditionnel de nombreuses nations, notamment les Mississauga de Credit, les Anishinaabe, les Chippewa, les Haudenosaunee, et les Wendat. I would first like to thank the wonderful family, the wonderful couple who have hosted me here today in their home, Faten Saloom and Samer Ghazi. Faten is a civil engineer. She works at East Harbor, and she is building a train station for us. So thank you very much for that, Faten. It's going to be a GO station and on the new Ontario line. It's good that she's a civil engineer because they've done some renovations and made this house even nicer, and Faten's professional qualifications helped a lot. And I also want to thank Samer Ghazi. Samer just got his PhD in stem cell transplantation, and he works at Princess Margaret Hospital. So I really want to thank you for your warm welcome. I want to thank you for the contributions that you make to Canada every single day. And it was really a pleasure for me to see the beautiful home you live in with your 3 wonderful daughters. Faten and Samer used a first home savings account to save up some money to buy this, their very first home. And they also used the home buyer's plan to withdraw some money from other savings accounts. They have an insured mortgage, and it's really, I have to say, very heartwarming for me to meet a couple, to meet a family that is taking advantage of some of the programs we've put in place to buy their first home. They were renting before in Newmarket, and moving here to Scarborough has made it easier for Faten and Samer to get to work. It's a shorter drive. It's easier for their eldest daughter, who is studying to be an architect at TMU, to get to school. So I'm just delighted to see these programs helping a wonderful Canadian family buy their first home and really put down roots. And for people thinking of choosing Scarborough, I recommend you have a conversation with Faten and Samer, because they've told me how much they love their new neighborhood. Je voudrais commencer en parlant un peu de l'économie canadienne. Le Canada est en tête de G7 pour la réalisation d'un atterrissage en douceur après la récession du Covid. L'inflation est passée à 2% en août, et maintenant l'inflation au Canada était dans la fourchette cible du Banque du Canada pour 8 mois consécutifs. Le Canada était le premier pays du G7 de réduire le taux directeur pour la première fois. Le Canada était le premier pays du G7 de réduire le taux d'intérêt directeur pour la deuxième fois. Et le Canada était le premier pays du G7 de réduire le taux d'intérêt pour la troisième fois. L'économie va dans la bonne direction, et c'est une bonne nouvelle pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes, pour les familles canadiennes, comme la famille du Faten et du Samer. Les salaires ont dépassé l'inflation pendant 19 mois consécutifs, et c'est vraiment une importante nouvelle, parce que ça veut dire que les salaires, les chèques pour les gens peuvent acheter de plus. Now I'd like to just talk for a moment about the new measures that we've been putting in place over the past several weeks, including a new measure we announced just a couple of days ago to help even more families buy a home, to help families expand that home. So we announced at the beginning, we announced a couple of weeks ago 30-year mortgage amortizations for all buyers, for all first-time home buyers, for families like Summer and Faten, and for all Canadians buying a newly built home. We announced that the level for insured mortgages will be increased to $1.5 million, and those measures will come into force on December 15th. This week, we announced some measures that we've put in place to help families who want to add a secondary suite to their home. This is something I'm really excited about because we all know that Canada needs to build more homes faster. We know an important way to do that is to have gentle density in our cities, in our neighborhoods. And we put measures in place last year to encourage big developers to be building more homes faster, particularly when it comes to purpose-built rental. There's a gap in the market, and that's important. The measures we announced this week will allow regular Canadian families to expand their homes, make it easier for them to expand their homes. Maybe, I was talking to Faten and Summer. Their parents don't live in Canada right now. I think that's hard for them, and I think it's hard for their children. One day they might like to add a basement suite or a garden flat, and that could be a good place for a grandparent. It could be a good place maybe for a child to live. We think that that sort of gentle density is a really good way to allow Canadian families to participate in this great national project of increasing housing supply. So what have we done? We have said if you are building a secondary suite, adding it to your home, whether it's a basement apartment, whether it's a garden suite, whether it's laneway housing, you can refinance your mortgage and have a 30-year amortization. You can access up to 90% of the value of your home, including the value added by the secondary suite, and you will be eligible. This is in the insured market. You'll be eligible for these terms for a value of up to $2 million, including the value that the secondary suite adds. And those changes are going to be effective January 15th. I know I talk to a lot of Canadian families who are keen to add that space to their home, have a family member be able to live with them. And this is going to really allow them to do that and more generally add that gentle density, add that supply for all of us. We also announced a couple of weeks ago, and this is a very important fact to underscore for people who already have mortgages. We announced actually in the budget that if you have an insured mortgage, you do not have to re-qualify with a new stress test to switch lenders. OSFI announced very recently that if you have an uninsured mortgage and you just want to do a straight switch to a different lender, you do not have to re-qualify. I want to emphasize those two announcements because together what they mean is if you have a mortgage and it's coming up for renewal, you do not have to pass a stress test again to switch lenders. It's really important for me because I have talked to a lot of Canadians who are concerned about the mortgage renewal that's coming up. Today, you can shop around. You can get the best deal for yourself and your family, and I think that is a really valuable benefit. So, we have an ambitious plan to build more homes faster, to get 4 million homes built by 2031. Key elements of that plan are to increase supply. Increasing supply by removing the GST on purpose-built rental, increasing supply by providing even more concessional financing from CMHC to get those purpose-built rental apartments built, increasing supply by working through our Housing Accelerator Fund with municipalities to get them to cut the red tape so that they're it is possible to build more homes faster. And increasing supply by looking at the stuff the federal government owns and saying, you know, let's liberate federal lands. We call it lazy land. Let's liberate that so that it is used to build homes for more Canadian families. And we're focused on ensuring that young families like this one are able to buy their first home. Measures like the First Home Savings Account, measures like the Home Buyers Plan, measures like the mortgage amortization measures that I've just been speaking about. I do just want to conclude by emphasizing some really good news that we have had just this week. And that is that rents are coming down in Toronto and in the GTA. In Toronto, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment is down more than 1% month over month and more than 8% year over year. For a two-bedroom apartment, it is down 0.8% month over month and 8.2% year over year. And we've seen reductions in rent month over month and year over year in communities across the GTA, in Mississauga, Oakville, North York, Etobicoke, Burlington, and Brampton. I emphasize that because I know that, you know, since the COVID recession, things have been really hard for Canadians, and rent has been a real challenge for a lot of Canadian families. The fact that rents are coming down is really good news. Okay, merci pour votre attention. I would just one last time like to thank Faten and Samer, congratulate them on their beautiful house and their beautiful family. Thank them for their warm welcome today. Et je suis prête à répondre à vos questions.
Thank you. Stephanie Hughes, Bloomberg. So data released this morning shows that the income inequality gap is the largest since Statistics Canada began tracking this info. And there's been a lot of housing policy focused on making it easier to save for a home, for example, the lower down payment requirements. But what solutions do you have for supporting low-income Canadians that might be priced out of the market in accumulating wealth?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Income inequality is an issue that I have personally been focused on for a really, really long time, since before I entered elected politics. I wrote a book called Plutocrats, The Rise of the Global Super Elite and the Fall of Everyone Else. And the central theme was really that we're living in a time where forces of the technology revolution, globalization, and also the force of technology revolution and globalization are hollowing out the middle class and driving income inequality. And my view then and my view now is it's really important that, first of all, this is a real problem. It is an economic problem, but it is also a social and political problem. You know, I think in Canada, we want to live in a middle-class country, in a country where middle-class Canadians can have a good life and where everyone who works hard can join the middle class and live a good middle-class life. And for me, that is how you create a healthy economy, but it's also how you create a healthy society and the kind of communities that I think we all want to live in. So, very important question. We are working very, very hard to lean against this tendency in the global economy towards more inequality, driven by the technology revolution, driven by globalization. And we're leaning against it with very specific policies designed to support middle-class Canadians and people working hard to join the middle class. And now I'll give you a few examples. My favorite one is early learning and childcare. Childcare costs down already 50% here in Ontario. That is a savings of $8,000 per child per family here already, and we are working hard to drive those costs down to $10 a day. That is a real savings for a family. It makes a big difference in their monthly budget, and it also helps that family to build a middle-class life, because when you have great, affordable, high-quality childcare, it makes it easier for, I was going to say both parents to work, but I'm going to be honest, it's usually the mother. It makes it easier for women to have a child and to have a job, just like Faten, who makes such a big contribution to our community as a civil engineer. So early learning and childcare, affordable early learning and childcare, very important way to lean against inequality. Another measure which is so important and is having an impact is dental care. And we are seeing a real enthusiasm among Canadians to go out and get their teeth, their dental health taken care of. We have 2 million Canadians already taking advantage of this program. It's making people healthier, and it also helps people's paychecks go further, because some people had been, making really difficult budgeting choices because otherwise they couldn't afford to go get their teeth cleaned, to go get that cavity filled. So that is another really important way of leaning against inequality. And then the final thing that I would mention is really ensuring that we have the kind of economic growth that creates good paying middle class jobs. So we've put in place a set of ITCs, of tax credits, to encourage investment in the green industrial transition. And those tax credits, for the first time in Canadian history, have a labor requirement. So to take advantage of the full value of those tax credits, you have to be paying the prevailing union wage. That's because we want economic growth, and we want economic growth that is helping middle-class families.
Not housing related, but Tech CEO Jonathan Price said this morning that your government should do more to support critical minerals investment, including putting up more public money and speeding up permitting. I was curious about your response to those remarks.
Well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Jonathan, and I actually met with him just a few weeks ago in Vancouver. And I really, really believe in the importance of mining to the Canadian economy. We're a country with a great mining history and with some really strong miners. And we are a country that is richly endowed in critical minerals and metals. They are increasingly important today as part of the green transition, and at a time when our allies and partners around the world are increasingly keen to get their critical minerals and metals from an ally. They want to have supply chain security. So this is a great time for miners in Canada. It's a great time for the critical minerals and metals sector. Our government is really proud to have put forward, I think, the first in Canadian history, a strategy for critical minerals and metals. And that we put in place a couple of years ago. We have a special fund dedicated to supporting projects in critical minerals and metals. Our suite of investment tax credits for the green transition, which is worth more than $90 billion, includes specific measures and incentives to support investment in critical minerals and metals. We're working closely as part of our partnership, a Canada-US task force that I co-chair with Amos Hochstein. We're working closely to coordinate supply chains with the US, and you have seen as a result of that partnership, several significant investments in Canadian critical minerals and metals by the U.S. to support that supply chain. But the final thing I would say is a real challenge in the development of critical minerals and metals mining and processing in a country like Canada, in a country like Australia. I'm thinking about rare earths, I'm thinking about other critical minerals and metals, is that we are seeing very targeted very intentional Chinese action to wipe out the nascent miners and processors in some of these areas. And I do think that we, at the G7, working with partners, working with political allies in this space, really need to find collective ways to support our miners, our processors in this space. I think we've all recognized that we need more supply chain security, and I think it will take collective action to make that happen.
Thank you. Sorry, Gideon Scanlon, iPolitics. You mentioned that there was the full value of the mortgage would be, the 90% on the secondary suite mortgage would be calculated on the basis of the total value inclusive of the secondary property, which suggests that the values would rise. Could that actually make it even more difficult for Gen Zs and millennials to buy their first home if house prices are rising and they're living in their parents' basement? Could it trap Gen Zs and millennials in their parents' basement?
No, not at all. Because, let's be clear. What we're talking about is supporting people adding a secondary suite to their home. That means actually adding more supply. Really what we're saying is we want to encourage supply in the housing sector. Our measures have been focused on, big builders, people who are out there able to build more purpose-built rental. We've been supporting co-ops in developing more housing. This is what I would describe as a middle-class supply-side housing measure, and it goes alongside the loan program that we announced in the budget to help people get that money to build that secondary suite.
A follow-up there. Many of those developments have been based in the sort of commuter belt cities and the Golden Horseshoe. I know that across those and outside of Toronto, there's been, in the first half of 2024, according to the CMHC, a doubling of construction. Is there a risk that a sudden influx of downtown suites might drive investors away or cool investor interest in those projects?
Gideon, I am really not worried about us having too much housing supply in Canada. What I worry about is, can we get enough homes built fast enough? We have a housing gap, and we have a gap across the spectrum. We need more purpose-built rental. We need more homes that first-time home buyers can buy. We need more gentle density, like basement apartments, garden suites. Really, right now, we just need to build. We need more co-op housing. We need more affordable housing. We need more housing across the spectrum. I think, Canada is in a fortunate situation. We are a country that is growing. But I think we all recognize that to be a successfully growing country, we need to be sure that housing supply is keeping up with the growth of our country, and housing supply across the spectrum, whether it is co-op housing, whether it is affordable purpose-built rental, whether it is homes that a first-time home buyer can afford to buy. So we're focused on all of that, and I respect the question. But for me, it would be a good problem to have for someone to say, wow, there's just too much housing supply in Canada. I don't think we're there yet.
Good afternoon, Trevor Owens with Global National News. Mr. Poilievre said today that he supports involuntary drug treatment for minors and those in prison. Do you support that position?
Look, let me just start by saying the drug crisis, the overdose crisis, is a real tragedy. And I think we all have to begin our thinking about it from remembering that, so many families in Canada are touched by this. And for each family, that is a tragedy. It's a son or a daughter. It's a father or a brother who has their life really wrecked by addiction and who sometimes loses their life. And I think it is very important to start with that realization and, you know, really to be compassionate and really to recognize how painful and how horrible this is for the people who get pulled into that, and also for their families and their friends and everyone who loves them. So that would be the first thing I would say. And I really want to say it especially to all those families. In terms of what we need to do, I think that it is clear that we need to take a science-based approach. We need to listen to our doctors and healthcare professionals. And we also need to take a public safety-based approach. I had a really good conversation about this and many other issues with Miron Demkiv, the Toronto Chief of Police, talking both about the compassion and the care and also the public safety side of things. And that means that we have to use all the tools we have at our disposal. We have to be sure people get the treatment they need. And sometimes a person can be too sick to really recognize what treatment they need. And we also have to be sure that people are safe in their communities. I really believe that with an approach led by compassion, led by a recognition that, you know, these are our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, and we want them to get better. And also, we need to be sure our streets are safe, our communities are safe, our kids can take public transit, home from school, and feel safe there. I think we can do both.
Thank you. And my next question is on pharmacare. Pharmacare is expected to pass in the Senate today. When will Canadians expecting to receive drugs under this program be able to access them? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. As you know, this is a measure where we need to work closely with provinces and territories. I think that this is an important measure to make life better for Canadians. You know, Stephanie asked me about income inequality and the middle class. It's an important question. Pharmacare is one of the answers. Making contraceptives free for Canadians is a really big deal. That makes life more affordable for young people, probably especially for young women, and I'm very keen to support them. And I think that it is just outrageous that a single young woman in Canada should get pregnant when she doesn't want to be just because she couldn't afford contraceptives. So this is important. And diabetes medication. Diabetes is a real problem for many Canadians. Making that medication free, a real improvement in people's lives. It will mean that people are taking the medicine they need to stay healthy. And that is another way that we support the middle class and we lean against income inequality. We do need to work with the provinces and territories to do this, though. We are extremely keen to get to work delivering free contraceptives, delivering free diabetes medication to Canada. I know my colleague, Mark Holland, is just champing at the bit to get some deals done with provinces and territories, and I really hope that we can get that done quickly. Okay, merci beaucoup, chers amis. And weren't we lucky to have such nice weather?